We're so glad you're here today in this community that strives to be loving, inclusive, and compassionate. One way to connect with this community is to let us know you're here. If you are a newcomer, welcome. We're glad you're here. We encourage you to fill out a newcomer card in the pews and put it in the offering basket when it comes by later. And please stay and chat with us after the services. If you're joining us online, please fill out the newcomer card online. If you've been a longtime member in the congregation, we encourage you to wear your name tag. This helps everyone feel more connected and helps our newcomers get to know us more easily. We love having people of all ages in this community. As you came in, we hope you saw the basket of activities for hands that like to stay busy. This is for all of you of any age. We welcome all of the wiggles and sounds of a multi-generational community. If you haven't already, please put your phones on silent. We are so glad each and every one of you are here, and welcome. Would you guys like a story? All right, so to kick off our theme of curiosity, radical curiosity, I'd like to share one of my favorite childhood stories with you. Are you curious? Yeah. All right, you're going to learn about a story I've chosen. We'll read the story and I'll tell you why I chose it. So this is a story called Amelia Bedelia. I don't know if you know this story or not. We'll get it up on the screen. The pictures are funny. Are we getting the pictures up? Okay. All right, there she is. There she is, Amelia Bedelia. Okay, so maybe some of you know this. This is by Peggy Parrish. Oh, Amelia Bedelia, your first day of work, and I can't be here, but I made a list for you. You do just what the list says, said Mrs. Rogers. Mrs. Rogers got into the car with Mr. Rogers. They drove away. My, what nice folks. I'm going to like working here, said Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia went inside. Such a grand house. These must be rich folks. But I must get to work. Here I stand just looking, and me with a whole list of things to do. Amelia Bedelia stood there a minute longer. I think I'll make a surprise for them. I'll make lemon meringue pie. I do make good pies. So Amelia Bedelia went into the kitchen. She put a little of this and a pinch of that into a bowl. She mixed and she rolled. Soon her pie was ready to go into the oven. There, said Amelia Bedelia, that's done. Now let's see what the list says. Amelia Bedelia read, change the towels in the green bathroom. Amelia Bedelia found the green bathroom. Those towels are very nice. Why change them, she thought. Then Amelia Bedelia remembered what Mrs. Rogers had said. She must do just what the list told her. Well, all right, said Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia got some scissors. She snipped a little here and a little there, and she changed those towels. There, said Amelia Bedelia. She looked at her list again. Dust the furniture. Did you ever hear tell of such a silly thing? At my house we undust the furniture, but each his own way. Amelia Bedelia took one last look at the bathroom. She saw a big box with the words dusting powder on it. Well, look at that, a special powder to dust with, exclaimed Amelia Bedelia. So Amelia Bedelia dusted the furniture. That should be dusty enough. My, how nice it smells. Draw the drapes when the sun comes in, read Amelia Bedelia. She looked up. The sun was coming in. Amelia looked at this list again. Draw the drapes. That's what it says. I'm not much of a hand at drawing, but I'll try. So Amelia Bedelia sat right down and she drew those drapes. Amelia Bedelia marked off about the drapes. Now what? Put the lights out when you finish in the living room. Amelia Bedelia thought about this a minute. She switched off the lights, then she carefully unscrewed each bulb. And Amelia Bedelia put the lights out. So those things need to be aired out too, just like pillows and babies. Oh, I do have a lot to learn. My pie, exclaimed Amelia Bedelia. She hurried into the kitchen. Just right, she said. She took the pie out of the oven and put it on the table to cool. Then she looked at the list. Measure 2 cups of rice. That's next, said Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia found 2 cups. She filled them with rice, and Amelia Bedelia measured that rice. Amelia Bedelia laughed. These folks do want me to do funny things. Then she poured the rice back into the container. The meat market will deliver a steak and a chicken. Please trim the fat before you put the steak in the icebox, and please dress the chicken. When the meat arrived, Amelia Bedelia opened the bag. She looked at the steak for a long time. Yes, she said, that will do nicely. Amelia Bedelia got some lace and bits of ribbon, and Amelia Bedelia trimmed the fat before she put the steak in the icebox. Now I must dress the chicken. I wonder if she wants it to be a he chicken or a she chicken, said Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia went right to work. Soon the chicken was finished. Amelia Bedelia heard the door open. The folks are back, she said. She rushed out to meet them. Amelia Bedelia, why are the light bulbs outside? Asked Mr. Rogers. The list just said to put the lights out, said Amelia Bedelia. It didn't say to bring them back in. Oh, I do hope they didn't get aired too long. Amelia Bedelia, the sun will fade the furniture. I asked you to draw the drapes, said Mrs. Rogers. I did, see? Said Amelia Bedelia. She held up her picture. Then Mrs. Rogers saw the furniture. The furniture, she cried. Did I dust it well enough? Asked Amelia Bedelia. That's such nice dusting powder. Mr. Rogers went to wash his hands. I say, he called, these are very unusual towels. Mrs. Rogers dashed into the bathroom. Oh, my best towels, she said. Didn't I change them enough? Asked Amelia Bedelia. Mrs. Rogers went to the kitchen. I'll cook dinner. Where's the rice I asked you to measure? I put it back in the container, but I remember it measured 4.5 inches, said Amelia Bedelia. Was that meat delivered? Asked Mrs. Rogers. Yes, said Amelia Bedelia. I trimmed the fat just like you said. It does look nice. Mrs. Rogers rushed to the icebox. She opened it. Lace, ribbons. Oh dear, said Mrs. Rogers. The chicken. You dressed the chicken? Asked Mrs. Rogers. Yes, and I found the nicest box to put him in, said Amelia Bedelia. Box, exclaimed Mrs. Rogers. Mrs. Rogers hurried over to the box. She lifted the lid. There lay the chicken, and he was just as dressed as he could be. That was one of my favorite pictures was the chicken. Mrs. Rogers was angry. She was very angry. She opened her mouth. Mrs. Rogers meant to tell Amelia Bedelia that she was fired, but before she could get the words out, Mr. Rogers put something in her mouth. It was so good, Mrs. Rogers forgot about being angry. Lemon meringue pie, she exclaimed. I made it to surprise you, said Amelia Bedelia happily. So right then and there, Mr. and Mrs. Rogers decided that Amelia Bedelia must stay, and so she did. Mrs. Rogers learned to say, undust the furniture, unlight the lights, close the drapes, and things like that. Mr. Rogers didn't care if Amelia Bedelia trimmed all of his steaks with lace. All he cared about was having her there to make lemon meringue pie. Yay! So, when I read this story nearly 50 years ago, I remember thinking how funny it was, but also how alarming. I mean, anyone could make the mistakes Amelia made. She drew the curtains. She dressed the chicken. She dusted the living room. How could our language have such duplicity? How could words mean two or more different things? So my own linguistic curiosity took off, and I've devoted over 30 years of my life to appreciating the power of words to make both intended and unintended meanings. What I love most about language and literature is its malleability, its unique meaning to each individual. I love hearing or reading how my students interpret something through their own filters, bringing new layers of meaning to me. I think that being curious, taking risks, and making mistakes is how we learn. But being able to make a mean pie is definitely an essential life skill.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go. Hey, everyone. The joy of technology, right? I was going to tell you a little story to start us off here. I was an undergrad at Antioch College in the early 2000s when our political leaders in the United States were leading us into an invasion of Iraq for the second time. It was post 9/11, and the country was all hyped up on patriotism and violent rhetoric, and the times felt truly depressing and bleak. And during this time, I was taking a class dedicated to the art of conducting interviews. Our professor had designed a syllabus that was meant to improve our skills at being interviewed and at interviewing others. And early in the semester, we had just come into the classroom, and all of the students were sitting in a circle with our professor, and the mood in the room was full of gloom and hopelessness. Learning how to interview people and being in a classroom in general just felt really silly and too unimportant when the world all around us was feeling so scary and uncertain. And I was reminded of that time recently. The feeling felt familiar when I was meeting with our worship team this month to explore our spiritual theme. And our theme for this month is radical curiosity. And in the midst of the awfulness that's going on all around us, dedicating our Sunday services for an entire month to thinking about curiosity felt like it was just totally not responsive or appropriate to the times that we're living in. And we've had this post-inauguration playbook for quite some time. We knew what the plan was going to be. For some, what has been unfolding is not a surprise, since Project 2025 practically outlined it for us. And for some of us, everything is much worse than was even expected. And either way, the rapid speed of the harmful, hateful changes is really overwhelming right now. And it's overwhelming even though we know that shock and awe is part of the strategy, right? Steve Bannon literally bragged about how easy it would be to overwhelm liberals and the media with an onslaught of initiatives. Flooding the zone is what they called it. And even though we know that overwhelm is the strategy, it is still breathtakingly hard to handle at times. And our work, and I say this totally unironically, our work is to not let ourselves get overwhelmed. Part of the strategy of overwhelming the opposition is to keep us continually reacting and to sap us of our energy and our decisiveness and our focus. And to counter this strategy and hard times in general, some suggest that the best response is for people to boldly commit to being wildly imaginative, even if that feels weird and like it's not responding to the times. In his book on curiosity, Seth Goldenberg suggests the birth of what he calls fourth places. Spaces where it is safe to intentionally dream about the world being different than it is. He says first places are the home, second places are our workplaces, third places are community spaces like barbers or cafes or playgrounds, sometimes churches. Fourth places, he say, are also community oriented, but with a focused and intentional dedication to the future. The fourth place, he says, is where we reclaim our identity as people responsible for shaping the future. It's a place where we can bridge our public and our private selves, manifesting a sense of purpose as we imagine and build what comes next. And just the fact that we feel, that our worship team was feeling, that I was feeling, that we feel that imagination and curiosity are too frivolous these days, feels like it plays right into the plan to make us so overwhelmed that we feel helpless. And as I thought more and more about this, it got me a little self-righteous feeling. And then I was thinking, maybe when we are faced with an onslaught of harm and pain, a little self-righteousness is helpful. It might be what we need. So I'm going to invite you into something just a little bit weird. I want to pause and do a little self-righteous practice together. Will you do this with me? It's like a spiritual practice, but a little different. So I invite you to get comfortable in your chair. And I'm gonna watch. So I want to see you all getting comfortable in your chair. And instead of relaxing and softening and grounding the way we might for a spiritual practice, I invite you to move your body into a posture of self-righteousness. So maybe for you, that means straightening your spine. Maybe it means taking up a little bit more space. I'm watching to see if I can see you all doing this. Maybe it means that you're going to kind of puff out your chest a little bit and maybe even tense up a little bit. And then after you feel like you're in a good posture of self-righteousness, we're going to give ourselves a little pep talk. I find when I'm giving myself a self-righteousness pep talk that sometimes I have a little head and shoulder shake that I do. You might do that too. Here's what my pep talk sounds like, and then I'm going to invite all of you to share yours just in unison as a mantra. Here's my useful, I call it useful, my useful self-righteous pep talk. It sounds something like this. There is no freaking way, you can see I get my finger out and everything, There is no way I am letting Donald Trump and Elon Musk take away the truth of the world as I know it. This seems silly, right? But I think sometimes we need this. Okay, here's the continuation of my self-righteousness. There is no way that I'm going to spend these next 4 years or however many years just playing whack-a-mole with their hate. I won't let anyone take my sense of what is real and right and true and magic and so full of life in this world. Absolutely not. Okay. That's my little self-righteous mantra. I want to see yours. So you're going to go next. I want to hear your mantra. I want all of you to puff up, get your backs straight or whatever it looks like for you to do that. Get your wiggles and your like self-righteous head nod. I'm going to watch on my video over here, and I want everyone at the same time to just say out loud whatever your self-righteous, snarky self wants to say into this space right now. Just all at the same time. Go. I see some wiggles. I see some heads. I can't hear you all, so I don't know if you're finished. Are you finished? Are you feeling good? Did you get the wiggle out?
You go, girl.
I love that I heard a you go girl right at the end there. Yes. I keep thinking to myself, self-righteousness stems from the word that is characterized by justice, morally right. And maybe we need occasional reminders to take up space and to feel our humanity and breathe into our certainty right now rather than our uncertainty. In the years ahead, there is going to be a pile-on of policies and structures that try to stop us from being creative, that prevent us from being empathetic and curious humans. And we will not let that happen. That class that I took back in college, when we were faced with politicians making all these horrific plans on our behalf, that college class became an example of a fourth place of this creative space. So even though we were sitting in this class, and at that moment, the idea of learning about interviewing each other felt really trite and silly, given the reality of the world, there was a moment that changed it and fed our ability to think with radical curiosity about it. In this particular case, sitting in that classroom, feeling the inevitable brink of war, our professor suddenly stood up and he said, "You know what? I have an idea." And then he outlined to us the possibility that maybe we could toss out the entire syllabus as he had designed it and instead dedicate the class to responding to the times we were living in. Together, we co-created a new plan as the class. We decided together that we would begin documenting the voices of dissent. And this creativity, transforming the entire class, throwing out the entire syllabus as it had been planned, this creativity led to interviews with people in the community and relationship building with veterans and creating artistic magazines with voices from people in the protest marches in Washington, D.C. And so much more than we ever could have imagined if we were just responding always to the moment we were in. And in this fourth place in this class, we were able to live into a curiosity and creativity that instead of feeling overwhelmed, helped us to be inspired and joyful and hopeful, even as we resisted in the ways that we could, the hatred and the violence that we were seeing. Unitarian Universalist churches are a prime example of community spaces that can become fourth places. But I think in these times, we need a bit of cultivation to truly make them fourth places of imagination and creativity. In order to get into this wild imagining that allows us to think creatively about the current onslaught and not just make ourselves exhausted by playing whack-a-mole, there are several elements that I think we need to commit to here. So I'm going to throw out some ideas to you. There's 5 of them. And I think that if we can focus our commitment to these 5 things, then we can move into a space where the UU Church of Ogden can truly be a 4th place. So here are the 5 things, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what I'm thinking with each of them. The 5 things are community care, naming joy, finding some way of getting the fear and anger and overwhelm that we're feeling out of our bodies, moving it through our bodies, filling up on inspiration. And the 5th is recognizing everyday examples of resistance. If we can do these 5 things, I think we can be a place of cultivating curiosity and imagination towards whatever that thing is going to be in the future. So let me tell you just a little bit about each of them. Community care. I'm not going to say much about this because at the end of the month, we're going to dedicate an entire service to building practices for engaging in community care with one another. So we're not going to say much about that now, except that I feel like we all know that one of the antidotes to the harm we are seeing, and that we're going to see more of, is to be in strong relationships with one another. And in doing that, we need to care deeply for each other. And this can mean a whole spectrum of things. It can mean everything from silly things like sending jokes and cute pictures and love notes to friends and family, just letting people know right now that you care about them so that they too can get filled up with feel-good hormones. We need those right now. It can go all the way from that spectrum all the way to the other side where we are strengthening our systems and structures for supporting people so that we can care for those who will be harmed by current policies. So I hope you'll come to the service on the 23rd. Our newly formed care team is going to offer you a bunch of ideas for how we're going to do this in our congregation. The second thing is naming joy. I read recently a reminder that said something along the lines of, historically, even in times of brutal fascism, babies are born and people fall in love and there are beautiful sunrises. Even in these times of ridiculous harm and pain, there is still joy. And this isn't one of those sappy invitations to just like look at the bright side of all things. This is a reminder that joy exists always, and that recognizing joy is in and of itself an act of resistance. One of the reasons why Steve Bannon's Flooding the Zone works is that it leaves us feeling so unmoored and so horrified and so overwhelmed that it takes away our joy. And as a 4th place here, we'll need to hold on to moments of joy. And so you're going to see us practicing this in different ways at church. And I invite you to get creative about incorporating these ideas of joy into your daily lives as well. And I want to hear your examples of celebrating joy. I want you to share them with each other because it's truly an act of resistance. The third practice is this idea of moving fear and anger and overwhelm out of our bodies. There have been all kinds of authors who have researched the way that trauma impacts our brain and our bodies. And if you're curious about what happens at a scientific level, I can share some books and podcast resources with you. Just let me know. I will share those resources with you. But enough research has been done that we can confidently say that stress gets stored in our bodies in unhelpful ways, in harmful ways. It leads to all kinds of problems. And one of the ways we can help our bodies move stress through and out is by taking time, just like we're doing this morning, surrounding ourselves with beautiful music, singing together, giving ourselves time for silent reflection and for meditation and praying and breathing. And there is so much stress right now that just coming together on Sunday mornings is not going to be enough. I'd love to say that it will be, but it's not. We're going to need our own practices. And so I'm going to start offering a weekly gathering on Zoom to have a mini version of a Sunday service midweek. Every single Tuesday at noon, maybe you can join us during your lunch break. You can join me on Zoom for just 15 minutes of music and breath and connection, with the sole purpose of moving all the stuff that our bodies are holding through. So I invite you to see if you can make space in your schedule just for this 15 minutes of time to fill your spirit and move some of that anxiety out of your bodies. You can find the link in the newsletter every single Tuesday at noon. 15 minutes. Let's see if we can commit to that. The fourth and fifth things that we're going to practice here at UUCO are to recognize everyday examples of resistance and to fill up on inspiration. These two things go hand in hand. And there have been beautiful examples of resistance lately, large and small, humorous and heartfelt. I saw recently, you've probably seen this one too, in response to the anti-DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility tip line. Have you heard about this? There was a tip line that was literally designed to let people tattle on their coworkers if they heard of inclusion initiatives. In response to that initiative, people quickly rallied and spammed the tip lines with quotes from movies and jokes and other absurdity, all just to slow down the functionality of this harmful process that they had designed, this harmful tip line. And there are lots of other examples like that of resistance that are happening every single day. If you look for them, you will find inspiring resources and stories of inspiration everywhere. One of the tactics is to let us believe that there is no resistance happening, is to let us believe that we're helpless. And I don't want those examples of inspiration and resistance to be hard for us to find. When we're feeling overwhelmed, we might not have time or emotional capacity to look for inspiration and resistance. We need to find it easily. So you might have seen, if you're in person today, that in the back of the room on the doors, we've posted some chart paper. We're going to have it up all month and maybe longer if it feels like it's useful. There's one chart paper page for everyday examples of resistance, and there's another page for sources of inspiration. And I have added a few of my own ideas to that chart. We'll take some pictures. We're going to share them out. I invite you after the service today to grab a marker. Holly has them, and to add your tools and resources and stories and examples that have been useful to you or that you have heard about. Don't overthink it. There's going to be overlap between inspiration and resistance. That's fine. Just add it wherever it fits. We want to fill up these pages of paper with all of these examples and resources that feed our love, because that is what is needed right now. I invite you to write down examples in your own life throughout the week and then to share them on these pieces of paper on Sundays, or send me an email and we'll add them to the chart paper ourselves. Let's share all of the examples of inspiration and resistance that we're finding. Joy, community and self-care, resistance and inspiration. This is how we are going to nurture this fourth place. And this is how we're going to make it possible over these coming years for us to imagine ourselves into wildly loving and inclusive futures. May it be so.
So this next hymn is in the teal hymnal. It's number 1011. Return again. I just want to point out something to you. It's made up of two sections. One of them is marked with a one in a circle, and there's one with a 2 in a circle. So what we'll do is we'll sing section 1 twice, and then we'll sing section once. Then you can choose whichever section you want and sing it twice, and then back to section 1 twice.
Right.
Return
As we settle into a time of meditation and prayer, I invite you to just breathe. Perhaps you want to invite your self-righteous parts to just take a little breath. And with each breath, to let move through your body some of the anger, the hurt, the frustration, the fear you've been experiencing. Just let it move. Not as a way of letting it go necessarily, but just letting it move through. As you breathe, let all those feelings feed your work in the world without getting stuck inside you. And with each breath, take in a moment of gratitude. Take in a feeling of love. Breathing in and out, making space in your bodies. And as you breathe, I invite you to think back on our past week and to bring forward in your memories a moment of joy. As we commit to remembering joy in our lives and in this congregation, bring forward a moment of joy that you remember. And remember the moment as vividly as possible. The sights and the sounds and the feelings that were associated with that moment. And just let your body rest in joy. Yumi Sakugawa is one of the people one of the resources and people that are offering wisdom in these words. And I wrote their name down on one of the sheets in the back for your own inspiration to look up afterwards. And they offer us these words of prayer today. For those of you who feel and care deeply, we are in for a long era of endless heartbreak and grief. We will be broken down again and again, but we do not need to crumble into dust. That kind of breaking down is for the hungry ghosts of empire and fascism that will never be truly satisfied until they destroy each other and themselves. We can break open like geodes or seeds, breaking open for new life, or steel sharpened into the finest blade to cut through all that is not real, to leave only what is true and essential and good. We can break down, like how food gets broken down in our bodies, to serve as nutrients and fuel. What kinds of nutrients and fuel can we give to each other and the collective as we are broken down more and more into the true essence of ourselves? We can break down into despair, and we can break down into the person we are meant to be as we release what no longer serves us. Sooner or later, we must all be broken down beyond our comfort zones to really, truly show up and care for people we do not know as well as ourselves and each other, as well as the earth that holds us all. Break down, but choose how. And in this spirit this morning, I invite you to come forward with the prayers that you are holding on your hearts. You are invited to light a candle or drop a stone in our sacred gathering waters. A candle or a stone or both, whatever ritual will best hold the prayers on your hearts this morning, that will best hold the people and the places, the dreams and the hopes that could use our collective care. Please come forward.
for this fourth place, filled with care and courage, love and resistance, we commit to keeping this community resourced for the ministries ahead, both in our walls and beyond. The offering we collect each week supports us in being a community that can best respond to the needs of these times. As we collect our offering today, we remember our interconnectedness and interdependence, and we generously offer our care with hopes to support all through these times. Please rise and embody your spirit as we bless these offerings and the impact of this generosity in the days to come. The words for our song of gratitude are printed in your order of service. Your abundant generosity is part of modeling care and love. Thank you. As Kristin mentioned, our new 15-minute gathering midweek will be held on Tuesdays at noon. We're calling it In Reverence, and you will find more details, including the Zoom link, in the newsletter. If you've never had the thrill of speaking with your elected officials, what better time to make your voice heard? Every Thursday from 9 to 11:30 a.m., you can join other UUs and committed citizens in lobbying at the Utah State Capitol. No experience needed. You will get a brief training, details in your newsletter. And now our closing hymn is going to be hymn number 344 in the hardback hymnal. 3.
I'm gonna play the whole thing as an introduction.
buoyed by this community's care, love, and inspiration, and recommitted to resistance and radical imaginings of all things. May it be so.
Lifted up, oh, bless your way.